I do have an interesting selection of stories for you today. The first one I find very intriguing because I myself lived in a haunted dorm room when I was away at college many years ago. So, without further ado, here's the stories. Story 1. Haunted Dorm. My roommate and I kind of assumed the previous tenants were joking when they said they summoned a ghost. But it felt like bizarre, unexplainable nonsense was constantly happening in this room. About once a week, we'd both wake up from a dead sleep at the same time. Almost always 3:06 a.m. Both our phones would be glowing, where the radio and TV would be turned on simultaneously. One night we were laying in bed. Everything on top of my roommate's wardrobe fell to the floor. No explanation. Our toilet water turned red one day and stayed that way for 2 whole months. And then it went back to normal. It wasn't clogged. It worked fine. People in the surrounding dorm rooms had perfectly clear toilet water. It was just affecting ours. We would be showering and the shower curtain would get yanked open. Over spring break, I was one of maybe 12 people staying on campus. I woke up one night to loud snoring coming from my roommate's empty bed. I laid there as still as I could for what felt like forever. Finally, it grew quieter and quieter, terrified of what would happen, what I would see if I rolled over. So I just laid there. It was constant, and it always felt creepy and slightly malicious, like the ghost was just toying with us. One afternoon, though, that changed. I'm not a napper, like, at all. But that day I really needed a nap. So I curled up under a blanket at the foot of my bed, facing the door. At some point, I very groggily woke up. I could tell someone was in my room, watching me. I was scared at first, but when I opened my eyes, I saw the vague outline of my grandfather standing in the doorway. It was like a wave of relief. I felt so safe and comforted by his presence. That semester was really challenging for me, but it felt like he was checking on me to make sure I knew I'd be okay. I never shared that part with anyone because I knew it was him. There wasn't any cool concrete proof or anything. But after that moment, all the weird stuff with our other ghostly friend stopped. Story 2. Christmas time shift. It was December. I was alone. My husband was out of town on a work trip. One night I woke up to the sound of rumbling and keys opening the doorway. I get up and I run towards the hallway that overlooks the stairs and the front door. When I see the handrail, I immediately notice that the handrail of the stairs is decorated with lights and a poinsettia garland spiraling down the rail. I was incredibly confused because I didn't decorate it. Then, a second later, a man walks into the door. I remember his face so well. He was tall, at least 6 foot. He had a short, military-style haircut. We did live on a military base after all. Basically, everyone who lived in housing was active military, or the spouse of active military. He had a light complexion. He was thin, but he was in shape. He looked like he was a runner. And I watched this man walk right into my house, take off his jacket, put it on the side table. As I'm watching him do this, I say out loud, "What the fuck?" He looks up to where I'm standing there, and he looks just as surprised as I am. And he goes, "Oh shit." I turn. I run back in my room. I hop back in bed. It's only then that I wake up again. I immediately run towards the hallway. But this time, there's no poinsettia garland, no lights on the handrail, and there's no man coming in my door. It's as if I'd crossed into an alternate reality for a minute. Perhaps a parallel reality where that man lived in this house somehow. And I glitched and crossed into his universe. He probably still talks about this to his buddies, like I talk about this to my friends. So bizarre. Story 3. The Cabin Room. I was a complete skeptic before this incident. My wife and I rented a secluded, small, 2-bedroom cabin for a hiking adventure. Upon arriving, my wife walked into the house and said there was no way she was sleeping in one of the bedrooms. She said it was giving off bad energy. To her defense, it was a bit creepy. There was a weird doll dress just hanging on the wall as decoration, and a rickety rocking chair in the corner of the room. There was also an oddly placed door that was locked. It probably led up to the attic. Once we got settled, we discovered the cabin's journal with entries from past guests. There were multiple terrifying entries. My husband woke up to the smell of bacon and eggs cooking. No one else was awake yet. The doll dress in the bedroom is a gateway to hell. We woke last night to the sound of something walking in the attic. The locked door was unlocked and open when we woke up this morning. It seemed like every entry just got darker and darker. I called BS on all of this, telling her that I didn't believe any of it. But we decided to sleep in the living room on the floor. And we closed the door to the creepy room for the duration of our stay. The next night after hiking, we were eating and drinking outside by the fire. A few adult beverages into the evening, and I started daring my wife to go into that bedroom. She was freaking out and wouldn't, but I said there was nothing wrong with the house and proceeded to go inside to take the challenge of exploring the room at night. As I entered the hallway, my hand hit the doorknob. I turned the handle and pushed the door inward. The door opened approximately 10 inches and then stopped as it hit a chair that was propped up against the door. My mind quickly calculated the logistics of this situation. The door opens inward. The room only had one entrance. A chair on the inside of the room was keeping me from entering that room somehow. How did it get placed there? I let out a terrified scream, slammed the door shut, and played it off to my wife that I was just trying to scare her. We stayed the night, and I didn't tell her the real story until the next day when we were in the car driving away. Story 4. Dark Land. Growing up as a Navy brat, I lived in several houses, but only one was haunted. Thing was, it was a brand new house, but the land was old and had a bloody history. This is Virginia, where you could throw a stone and hit something Colonial War or Civil War related. This brand new ranch-style house was always cold, even in the hot, humid summers. You could turn off the air conditioning, and it would still be cold to the point where my toes would cramp up. Lights were always flickering, despite the wiring being brand new, and checked again by an electrician. Doorknobs were always being jiggled, with no one on the other side. The door that led to the garage was always shaking. Mom, who never bought the concept of the house being haunted, would say, "Oh, that's just the wind coming through the garage." Never mind the fact that the garage door was almost always closed. We never parked a car in there. It was just storage space. The rest of the doors in the house would close themselves a few seconds after being opened. Not slamming themselves, mind you, just slowly closing themselves. The thing is, they hadn't always done this. For years they'd stayed open when opened. Then one day, they all seemingly decided to start closing by themselves. I always had an uneasy feeling of being watched. And then one night, whatever, or whoever it was, touched me. I was 11. Being 11 and doing things that normal 11-year-olds do, I snuck out to the living room in the middle of the night to watch some late-night television, long after my parents had gone to sleep. Like every kid who does this, I had my face inches from the screen, volume almost down to 0. An itch began to build right between my shoulders, almost like someone was poking me. I reached over, and that's when I felt it. A hand. A man's hand. My fingers touched in between fingers and brushed knuckles. I gasped and turned around, and there was nothing. I turned off the TV, jumped up, and I ran back to my room. I buried myself under covers, hoping that whatever had touched me wasn't going to follow me. Thankfully, it didn't. But after that, I didn't sneak out to the living room to watch late night television for months. And finally, when I started to again, I'd watch the screen for a minute and then I'd turn around to make sure no one was behind me. There was no way I was going to be poked by a ghost again. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. Bye.